All right,
All right, ready to start?
ready to start.
Okay, welcome everybody to this episode, season 2, episode 6 of the Dan and Doug Show. We are absent Dan today. Dan has been under the weather. He wanted me to pass on a message to everybody that he says he loves all of you and misses you, and we'll see you soon. He's been out sick for a little bit. He's home. He's resting. He's probably still asleep. He might pop in. If he does, we'd love to see that. But I don't know if I don't expect to see him. So anyway, so today is
Oh,
um, -1D. So we have bridges today. We're doing bridge glue ups. We had been focusing for the last few episodes on bridge work. We did um, the bridge saddle. I guess the saddle slot location. We did bridge removal last time. This time we're doing bridge glue up. And for that, I wanted to have Beau join us because he's got some neat tricks up his sleeve regarding that. And we have Ian playing the role of Dan today. And so we're going to talk about bridges and primarily gluing up bridges, which is something we all do. And as I caution at the beginning of every D&D show, this is about different ways of doing things and different opinions about doing things. And there is no right way. And I say that every time, and it's probably getting boring to hear it, but it's important to me in the sense that when we get together to talk about one of these topics as it relates to repair, I'm showing stuff that I do. Dan shows stuff that he does. Whenever we have a guest on these episodes, we ask them to show us their tricks and their methods for doing things, and they don't always necessarily coincide with one another, or we don't always necessarily even agree. And that's the whole point behind this: is that there isn't a single correct way to do this, whether it's we're talking about bridges or we're talking about something else. So I like to emphasize that at the beginning of the show. This is about showing different ways of people doing things. By all means, anybody who's with us, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to chime in. You can unmute yourself if you're not already muted, um, and ask away. Um, so today we've got Beau. Beau, how are you?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon.
There you are.
Yes,
So
hello.
we're talking about bridges, and we got Ian as well, of course. Ian just did a few weeks ago. You did a demonstration for the Luth group with your crazy bridge contraption that you just came up with. That's
yeah.
part 3D printed, part uh, Terminator, um, and involving around that whole glue up thing. And that was the whole idea about doing a series on bridges was Ian's idea to kind of, instead of jumping all over the map, to spend a few weeks digging into a subject over the course of time. By the way, next month uh, at the next D&D show at the end of August, we have TJ Thompson coming on to talk about lots of his opinions about bridges, which should be interesting. So let's talk about gluing up bridges. Um, and I think it's incumbent upon us to talk about the differences of different types of glue up jobs, because when you're doing a bridge reglue versus a bridge replacement with a new bridge, if you're making a new bridge, you're replacing it with an already made bridge. Or if you're doing a bridge glue up on a new build, there's subtle differences between those three circumstances, which is also good to have Beau here for, because he's not only a crack repairman repairing cracks, but he's also a builder of incredibly fine instruments. So, Beau, what are your opinions regarding the differences between those circumstances.
What were the three again?
Well, generally speaking, whether you're doing a bridge reglue where you're pulling a bridge and putting it back on versus making a new bridge for a guitar versus making a bridge for a new guitar that you're building. I think there are subtle differences between those three acts, I think.
Yeah. For a new build, I try and get a bridge as light as possible, but still maintain a stability or a function of stability, strength. So you could just CA glue a saddle onto the top, I suppose, and that would be the lightest bridge you could ever have, but it would not do much. So that's kind of what that's my only two requirements for a new bridge on a new build.
Yeah.
That it be light and structurally sound.
Mm-hmm.
For a reglue or a replacement, just fitting the footprint is probably it, to make it look aesthetically pleasing and to be within the vintage parameters, to match, so it doesn't look weird, out of place.
On the guitars you're building, are they always the same style bridge? Are you always using like a 1x6 or a belly bridge, or do you always have, or is it?
Yeah, but I've got three for guitars. I've got three on my Waterform, I think, which is actually four. It's a rectangle Gibson style bridge, a rectangle pyramid Martin style bridge,
Okay.
a belly bridge like Martin style. I never do the. Actually, I refuse to do the up belly Gibson style. And the fourth one is a sculpted bridge, which is basically a belly bridge that I've carved with a Dremel, and it looks Art Nouveau-y and swirly and stuff. That's just for aesthetics. Yeah, but my favorite one is, because it's smallest, lightest, is like a one of those old kind of brick Brazilian style rectangle bridges. They're really light,
right,
really functional. On my own guitars, they're good. On some people get a little bit funny with them because there's not enough gluing area. Well, there's less gluing area than a belly bridge, but in my experience, I don't. If the bridge plate's good and everything's good, then everything's good.
Right.
But it depends. First thing I do when a lifting bridge comes in, I just put a mirror inside and usually have to give them further bad news.
Yeah. I think very often when you see a lifting bridge, at least in my estimation, probably at least more than half of the time, if not more, a lifting bridge is a symptom of something else.
Yeah.
What do you find with that, Ian?
Yeah, it certainly can be. I mean, I definitely want to take a look at the bridge plate before going, hey, you need a bridge reglue. So a lot of times X-brace is loose too.
So in your experience with doing the repair thing, how, if you were to guess at how often as a percentage are you doing reglues versus just making a new bridge? Is it, are you conscious of trying to save the old bridge rather than make a new one?
Yeah, I mean, if the old bridge can be saved, I mean, a lot of times, I mean, I come from a lot of different backgrounds in repairs. So, like my original history is workaday luthier versus my time at Gruens versus my time at Lark Street. Everywhere I've worked, we've had a different, I was working for somebody else. So there was like, each place had its own criteria for doing things.
So what, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, for instance, at Gruens, if we were doing an equiset on a Martin and the bridge had been shaved at all, we just replaced the bridge, because I mean almost all of those were probably lifting it and at least needed a bridge reglue. So sometimes, on those high glue bridges, that joint just fails, and the bridge plate's fine and the X brace is fine, and
Yeah,
it just needs to be glued back down.
like just like hot cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, it can be hot cars, or it can be, like the bridge was probably born flat, and the top took a curve to it. So, you know, in the old days, like I would just fit the original bridge to the top, because a lot of times that just meant taking stuff out of the middle, and you weren't really perturbing the wings much or making it look weird.
Yeah,
So
I can see that. So when you say it was different depending on where you were working, what was the motivation there? Was it a different philosophy towards your customer?
yeah, I mean, so what I just described, I mean, when I started out, you know, I was working in a shop where we take all comers. So, like, if that meant, a bridge popped off a Seagull, or a Cordoba Classical or whatever it was, you're just, basically doing more triage. Hey, the bridge is off, let's glue it back on, not ask a lot of questions. So
Okay.
that was kind of, at you know At, at Lark, I will say, the market had shifted to the point where you know, we were probably leaning a lot towards saving original bridges. Just probably, uh, Buzz and I disagreed on quite a few things, and I would say he kept some things that were structurally questionable because they were, original and keeping the value. I mean, everybody's got an opinion, so I don't want to say that he was making the wrong opinion. They weren't opinions that I would. It's not how I would go about things.
Yeah, I mean he was the owner of this. If you're talking about store inventory or
Mhm.
street repairs,
uh, either, you know,
okay.
either,
Because
it's just the way the market works, and somebody like Buzz has to be, sensitive both on customer repairs and his own store repairs, as to, what people are saying about the shop. So if, somebody brings in a guitar and you're like, hey, I'm yanking the bridge on that. And there's very few people that get to kind of, like TJ, for instance, gets to just, you know, basically tell people to pound sand, because he's kind of the EF Hutton of that world. And so, I mean, like, for instance, I saw one of his guitars where it was like a 38 D28, and he'd put a pocket saddle bridge on it. Very nice vintage replica bridge, but it was a pocket saddle. And he did it because in order to properly intonate the guitar, the saddle had to be very close to the face of the bridge. So it was absolutely a beautiful decision. It's not the type of decision that, you know, probably Fuzzy would feel comfortable making, just because, he doesn't have the gravitas to kind of push the market around like that. But he does, but he chooses not to for whatever reason.
yeah, I think when you're probably making decisions based on either store inventory or versus advising a customer and letting them know what their options are two different matters too. Because if you're then hanging something on the wall for sale, you're then kind of a little bit of a slave to the
Mhm.
vintage market. And ultimately speaking, in circumstances like that, whoever's signing the front of that check has the bigger opinion or the more
Oh
important
yeah,
opinion, you know.
absolutely, absolutely.
But while
Um,
we're on the subject, I just figured, like, I ran into the other room just to grab a top. So if you are dealing with because it dawned on me that it would probably be good to mention, just as an aside, that if you are dealing with a lifting bridge, because you mentioned you'd peek inside and take a look at the bridge plate. When I'm dealing with a lifting bridge, not only am I curious about the condition of the bridge plate with the pinholes and how good of a condition they are, whether or not I've got a bridge plate that's beginning to fold because the pinholes are worn, or if it's cracked, or I'll go inside the guitar and I'll physically try to get inside underneath the bridge plate this way to see if there's any separation. But the other things that are important to me are this brace primarily, of course, this brace as well, but this is here and here. Very often you'll find a lifted finger brace and or that space between the two finger braces here, right on this side of the bridge plate. If you've got separations here, you're going to have a buckling top that will tend to have the bridge begin to tilt forward this way as a result and get some bellying back here that's unnatural because of this area here and this area here. So that's always the first place I look when I have a lifting bridge to let me know if I've got other fish to fry and other repairs to do before I just tell a customer, oh, we're going to pull the bridge and put it back on or replace it or what have you. So I thought, just as a quick aside, those are areas that I look for specifically with almost every bridge that's lifting. If the first thing I look at when a guitar comes in, if I can see that seam on the back of the bridge, the next place I'm looking is inside the guitar at the bridge plate and those intersecting braces right around the bridge. Because like I said, to me, those are usually where I find the symptoms of other repairs that are, in my estimation, over 40 years of doing this, 50% of the time, it's a symptom of something else that's going on.
What percentage of the time?
I would say probably about half, 50% or more, that it's usually the cause of something else that's happening. I usually, with every bridge that comes in, half of the time, I'll find other repairs that are related to that. Now that's a kind of a chicken and an egg scenario. I find, and in my opinion, I find that if a guitar comes in with a lifting bridge, it's hard to tell whether or not the bridge beginning to tilt forward and beginning to lift in the back of the bridge is putting undue stress on the top, kind of cantilevering the top a little bit, causing this bulge back here that then causes braces to let go. It's my opinion that it's probably the braces that have let go that have allowed the top to deflect and therefore causing the bridge to pitch forward and tilt up. But that's something I just figured it was worth mentioning while we were talking about it. Let's quickly talk about glue and what kind of glues when you're dealing with a bridge root glue. And I'm going to start by admitting wholeheartedly, as I have before, that when it comes to glue, I am agnostic. I know there are people who have an opinion that you should always use this glue or that glue. If you use a good glue that is not old, my experience with most glues is that almost every glue you could use to glue two pieces of wood together, you wind up with a glue joint that's stronger than the wood around it in almost every case. There are glues that I'd prefer not to use for bridge root glue. I'm not a fan of fish glue for bridge root glues, primarily because its lack of shear strength. I do use hide glue for bridge root glues. I do use aliphatic resin glue. I'm not a big fan of PVA. Aliphatic resin and PVA are in similar chemical families, but polyvinyl has different characteristics than aliphatic resin. I have on occasion used epoxy when suffering from a cheap guitar that wasn't giving me a whole lot of other alternatives, although I'm not a big proponent of using epoxy on bridge re-glues or bridge glues or even a new bridge, just because it limits future options in my estimation. But when I have a guitar in that's period appropriate for using hide glue, I will always use hot glue for that. Although I don't necessarily feel that I have to use hot glue for every bridge reglue. And I know there are people who have different opinions. Job happens well before I ever get to liquid, that I ever get to glue. So that, and what I'm referring to is the fit of the bridge on the guitar, to me, is the entire job. Especially if you have an old guitar that has had all sorts of top deflection, or if it's had loose braces and the top is wonky, if it's got dips and sags in the top, or if it's got those little bulges around the dimpled area of the bridge right behind where those finger braces are. Um, if the top is domed at all, or if it's flatter, or whatever the circumstances are, for me, 100% of my success
Beautiful.
getting that bridge on is dependent on how well my bridge fits. I think we got somebody.
I got it. I got it.
So, and we can look at. I've got a guitar here, so if I move this over here, so how well that bridge fits to the top when I'm gluing up is paramount to me. If I'm using a replacement bridge where I'm putting a bridge on there, or if I pull the bridge off and I've got any of this, I don't know if you can hear it, where the bridge is rocking back and forth and it doesn't fit my top like it's a glove, I'm already halfway losing the job. In other words, I can, if I'm replacing a bridge and I pull a bridge out of the drawer and it's a brand new bridge and it's perfectly flat on the bottom and my top isn't perfectly flat, no amount of squeezing these two things together from underneath and on top, pushing these two things together so they meet, where you have a bridge that's flat and a top that isn't, hoping that one is going to match the other just by squeezing them together hard enough, will never get me a decent glue job. Or if I've got a bridge, where very often we get those bridges where you pull a customer's bridge, and if I grab a straight edge, and if I'm looking at the side of the bridge here, if that bridge there is, like, a lot of times they're curved this way just because the bridge has been pulling and it's got a curve to it. Now I've got a bridge that is not going to fit the top of the guitar. So the bridge is going to have to be fitted either to match the top, or I'm going to have to shape a new bridge bottom to fit the top of the guitar. Did somebody pass a question into the chat?
Yeah, somebody was wondering if you heat bend bridges, like we had TJ show how to do a while back.
I don't. That was that was actually the first time I've ever seen that done. I've never heat bent bridges. I have heat flattened bridges where I get that curl in the wings of the bridge where you can see the back of the bridge coming up and you look at the side of the bridge this way. I have gone as far as, on really warped bridges that I for some reason wanted to save, and I think it's suffice to say that almost every bridge reglue is different, because you've got different shape bridges, different style bridges. You got bridges with pins in them. You got bridges with bolts in them. You got bridges like that are old and misshapen. Certainly, I do agree with what Ian was saying earlier, that especially if you're doing a neck reset and you have a Martin bridge that was shaved down at all, and you're bothering to re-angle the neck, I always tell the customer that they're getting a new bridge as well, because I'm not going to set the neck to a lower bridge just for the sake of the fact that somebody's shaved it down. But I have heat bent bridges to flatten them if they are curved. And the way I do that is I just boil a pot of water, throw the bridge in the soup, and I just literally boil the bridge, take it out, flatten it, clamp it flat to a piece of plexiglass. So at least I get a bridge that's flattened out, and it'll stay there for a good period of days after it's dried out. So it has a new shape for me to then start carving. I'm gonna, when we start talking about the actual tools, I'll show you how I do it. But just in general, in terms of the generic conversation, for me, the fit of the bridge is paramount to the whole job.
Where are your pre-made bridges for Martin?
I used to get them from Martin back when they used to sell them. I haven't for a long time. I do have, I have an inventory system for when I make a bridge, which I do more often than not. We make our own bridges, and I make them blank without holes, so this way I can use them for different holes. I also make them blank with holes, depending on what I'm doing for inventory. But I have a simple, and we have drawers full of our shop made bridges for the purposes of bridge replacements. So almost 80% of the bridges we have are actually our own bridges that we make. I have a simple inventory system that I've been following for years, which is when I have to make a new bridge for a customer's guitar and I'm going through the hassle of making a bridge, I don't make a bridge. I make two, and one goes in the drawer. And you'd be surprised how fast, over a short period of time, you wind up with drawers full of bridges that save you time later. Because sometimes it's time for a bridge. If it's a standard, 2 1/8, you know, 11 30 seconds tall bridge for a Martin guitar. And like I said, I make them either with holes, for pinholes, or without. Almost every one of them that we make does not have a saddle slot because I put the saddle slots in after the fact, after it's on the guitar. Primarily because I'm more interested in having the saddle in the exact location it needs to be for string length compensation, as opposed to a standard place for a Martin guitar. So I haven't bought pre-made bridges probably in 25 years. But back when we used to do Martin warranty repairs, and you were able to purchase a bridge from Martin, I used to get them from Martin, but I haven't done that in a couple of decades. But that's I don't know. I know TJ makes bridges that are period correct for different styles of years of Martin, and that's probably where I would go today to get them. I've ordered a couple from different sources, and I'm usually not very impressed with them. They're close, but to my eyes, that something just doesn't look right about them, either in the wings or the back of the curve of the bridge, or something like that. But
I just got bridges from TJ, and they're absolutely beautiful.
I've seen one of them. You left one of them here.
Yeah,
and I might.
He does a 40s and a 30s, and honestly, the 40s could probably go on a 50s too. Like it's a pretty subtle distinction between 40s and 50s, but his 30s one, I was talking it up during the show, but like getting that back end on a 30s bridge without getting a facet into that and having it look right, boy.
Yeah,
he's getting $225 for those bridges, and I mean, I don't know, like repair guys and how they estimate their time on stuff. Like you're probably the only honest one doing it, but the idea that you can get in and out of a bridge, and if you're making $100 an hour, like that you can get in and out of a bridge in 2 hours is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that's one of the ways where my inventory system of every time I make a bridge, you're setting yourself up for a cut. So if you're cutting out the shape, if you're using a template,
Oh yeah.
if you're cutting the wing, it doesn't take that much more time to do the second cut for the second bridge. So my inventory system of developing an inventory of secondary bridges, I have some in the drawer. I haven't done it a lot. I resist the temptation to do that when it's a guild bridge because it seems like there aren't two guilds on the planet that have the same size bridge. So it almost doesn't seem.
Well, just so you know, TJ isn't making any guild replica bridges for whatever reason.
Well, that's true. But in those cases where I have to make a bridge for that, it's always a one-off,
Yeah.
and there's nothing going in the drawer. But there are a bunch of Gibson bridges that I have in the drawer for when I've made Gibson replacement bridges, and I'll make two and stick one in the drawer. And this way, over time, you can develop a nice inventory of that, and um, the and it's certainly a huge time saver when you get another bridge reglue to do or a bridge replacement to do, and you go to the drawer and you've got 15 of them in there.
Mhm.
Um, so that's certainly a helpful thing. So what about the fit, Beau?
Yeah,
Am I
I'm with you. I on my own builds, I have so the top is domed, either 28 foot, but lately 50 foot, and this is my sanding jig, and this is a 28 foot
Mhm.
curve. You can probably see the curve in it there, and so that just fits on there, and then
And those are for your builds. Is what you're
yeah,
typically.
then I'll just sand the bottom of it so the indexes perfectly. And this is actually good for a Martin flattish bridge too, because the curve you can kind of hit wherever you want on the very slight peak of the 28-foot curve. But I've done some creative scraping on bridges, like so if the top is lifting up a little bit, I'll use TJ Thompson's juicer to try and get it down to shape, and then I'll scrape the back of the bridge.
Okay.
So it's still technically a little bit thinner, but it's still, instead of like this, it's more
Right.
like, and yeah, I've had success with that. I've even I forget what it was, but it was a bridge with a really low bridge with weird inlays in the wing, and I just frankly couldn't be bothered to pluck them out, make a new bridge, inlay them in. Just the job didn't dictate the money that it would cost to do it. So I pulled the original bridge and just epoxied like an eighth of an inch. I think it was Indian rosewood underneath it. Maybe it was ebony, doesn't matter. But that was another way that I got a good, still usable original bridge up to where it should be, and it was a good option for that. Not good for everything, but and I think there was some creative scraping on that too after I'd epoxied the lifting piece up.
Mhm.
Yeah, but definitely fitting the bridge to the curvature of the top, whether it's X or Y or whatever those are,
Mhm.
long ways and crossways is.
I'd like
And
to,
go ahead.
oh, and listening to Beau and like where we're going with this, I'd like to point out that the bridge reglue is probably the most systematically underbid job uh, in guitar repair. I feel like when of
Okay.
all the things where like like people tend to bid it for like the best case scenario, and in my experience, the widest variability and how the project goes is
In your
bridge reglue.
experience, how do you find people are bidding it? In what range?
Well, for instance, when I was at Gruens, we had one size fits all, $140 for a bridge reglue. And like I don't know how you.
We're talking about back in like 2009 or 10. You were there.
Yeah, and even Nashville prices were it was somewhat low. Like it wasn't like cost of living hadn't really hit Nashville yet. So and it was a little bit weird because we weren't really doing outside work. But
So
even
like $140 would equate to what if you were trying to convert that to hours?
like hour and a half, something like that.
Right.
Like, well, no, actually, probably, I think our shop rate was 65. So what was that? Probably be slightly over 2 hours. So, but even adjusted, I mean, like it's like a lot of these projects, you never know what you're getting into until you do it. But like the bridge reglue is the one part where like a lot of people feel like they can give it a crack, like so. And when you're taking a bridge off, a lot of times you don't understand what's lurking beneath there. And
You're talking about in the condition of the wood underneath the bridge. You're talking
yeah,
about.
the condition of the wood. Also, just as simple as the fact that a lot of manufacturers didn't liberate all of the finish from underneath the footprint of the bridge, and then all of a sudden you've got to go back and play like a very very dicey game of operation to get the lacquer off of the.
Well, I think you're probably right in terms of the fact that it's probably a well underbid job. Present company probably excluded.
Yeah.
I'm talking about me. I just went over to grab my rate sheet. We bid and have for the longest time any acoustic bridge reglue at a minimum 3-hour bid at our shop labor rate. If I'm making a custom bridge, it's a minimum 5-hour bid at whatever your shop labor rate is. That's because, and then of course, depending on how well you evaluate a guitar when it comes in, if you're checking out, all of the things we talked about to check out inside the guitar, you're going to find related repairs that are related to the bridge that you have to account for as well, which in our shop bid a la carte. But that just for the sake of transparency, that's where I am. We're at a 5-hour bid for a custom made bridge and a 3-hour bid as a minimum for any bridge reglue.
So does that mean you're adding 5 plus 3 for? Because
no,
you have to glue on the new bridge.
I have to glue on the new bridge, so it's not 5 plus 3, it's 5 for the new bridge because I figured that I'm probably at 2 hours for making the bridge. So if I'm removing the old bridge, sometimes you're less dainty about how you preserve the condition of the original bridge. We have a bridge that we were just pulling yesterday that's in 3 pieces. That because we knew it was already cracked and warped when it came in, so we were less concerned about preserving that bridge than we were preserving the top underneath it. Mm-hmm. So in that one, we were going to be making a new bridge, and for that one, like I said, my little inventory system of if it's standard Martin size, which it looks like it is, my little inventory system of me taking the extra time to build a bridge and stick it in the drawer, whatever number of 20 or 30 times I'd done that in the past, where I was affording myself the extra time to make a few extra cuts, now will save me oodles of time by just going to the drawer and pulling out one of my own bridges that I made, preparing it to glue on the guitar. So that, in that sense, I'm making money in the future by preparing in the past. So let's switch to.
I charge $150 for a straightforward thing. So this.
Well, I've told you 1,000 times you don't charge enough for what you do.
a straightforward thing with no problems. It's like 15 minutes to heat it up and get it off, and then 15 minutes to clean it up, and then 15 minutes to glue it back on.
Mm-hmm.
That's without any problem, best case scenario.
So how do you bid that beforehand if you know if it winds up being not a best case scenario?
I just said I say that whatever comes about or any surprises, then we'll deal with that at the time. But normally I can tell if a new bridge is going to be needed, or you can see a crack or a very warped bridge. A lot of the time there is that. It's interesting that you were sort of measuring from the top with a concavity. I sort of look at it from the bottom with that angle.
Sure.
This is a gooseneck scraper just to scrape the middle out, and then I'd probably go a tiny bit too deep with a flat edge, is what I was doing when we started recording, and then just sand it so it's flat. I might lose like half a 64th on the edges or something, but it doesn't translate to any action difference. Or
yeah, you're going to lose 20 to 40 thou maybe. So yeah, why don't we switch gears and we start looking at tools? Want to do that?
Yeah.
So if you want to pin the Doug to it, we can just do a quick canvas of tools and my choice of tools, or options for tools mostly, because I look at it from the standpoint of the preparation for what we're doing is always the same. The only difference is the candidate, meaning the bridge itself. So if I let me see if I can get this a little lower. For me, the two parts of a successful bridge reglue has to do with the guitar, and the second part has to do with the fit of the bridge, and they're both one and the same. So this bridge fits pretty well. It's already had work done to it to fit onto the guitar. For my purposes, both for gluing on a bridge and or fitting a bridge, the paramount part for me is access to the bridge. It's one of the reasons why I came up with this contraption, is because when I'm working on a bridge, I like to sit as if I'm floating above the guitar. I want to see 100% around the bridge. I want to be able to see all the angles of the bridge and how it fits, as opposed to a guitar laying flat on a. Let me just grab this guitar over here, this dummy guitar. Rather than a guitar sitting flat on a bench where I have to, I don't know if you can see this in there.
You want a different pin?
No, it's okay. I only have one camera. But rather than a guitar sitting flat on a bridge where I have to bend over the bridge and I can't see from the other side of the guitar, or I've got to be spinning the guitar around to work flat and prone on a bench. For me, having a guitar that I can stand up straight and I can see how the bridge fits, and I can move the guitar around so I can see the fit at every point of the bridge, to me is paramount to getting this bridge to fit well. Like I said before, if I had a bridge that didn't fit well, what did I do with the other Martin bridge that I had here? I may have put it back in the drawer. So here's a Martin factory bridge that if I'm putting it on here, and this rocks back and forth. Let me see if I can zoom in. And this rocks back and forth and doesn't fit very well. I now have to fit this bridge to the face. So for me, being able to move a guitar around and lock it in place, no matter where I'm sitting, is all important to how a bridge is going to fit on a guitar.
Are they the Teflon things, Stu Maxwell, you got in there, Doug?
Yeah, and the second part of the success here is the whole concept that Ian is approaching with his bridge that he's working on with James Rodman, is that the bridge locks into the guitar. You really want to lock that bridge down so there's no movement whatsoever. So if we're here with the bridge sitting on the face of the guitar, and this has not been cleaned, this part has not been cleaned yet, but if that's sitting on the guitar, this physically cannot budge left to right, up or down. So when I go to spread glue onto this and I lock it into place, slip it on, it's locked. It's not moving anywhere. I've got a great fit to the top of the guitar so that when I go to put on whatever clamps I'm going to use, and we're going to do a little bit of canvas of clamps, but when I go to put clamps on, the bridge is not going to budge on me after my initial fit. I don't have to worry about the bridge moving one direction or the other. So these little pins, these are those Teflon pins that Stu Max sells. They look like this here. Every time I place a Stu Mac order, well, almost every time I place a Stu Mac order, I buy more pins. We have a huge collection of them because, for one thing, you can shape them. For another thing, it seems that over the years that they've changed a little bit, which is actually a good thing. So when I'm looking at a bridge here, let's say, and you slip it in, it fits differently for different bridges. A different pin from a different period or that's cut differently fits a little bit either better or worse. There are other times where we will cut, the tip. This one, for example, is not cut, but you can see that it fits into the hole very differently on this particular bridge than this pin fits much deeper for some reason. And as a result, that pin will allow this bridge to kind of wiggle about a little bit. And that's something you want to avoid, because if I go to clamp this up and there's a certain amount of viscosity from the glue, especially high glue, this bridge will skate all over the place and you wind up struggling with trying to hold it in place. I will go through all of my pins until I find the pin that fits. Let me see how this one fits. That one's too big.
I do an insertion of crazy ideas.
Sure.
If you chuck that Teflon pin up into a drill and push it into your bridge pin hole, it'll actually work as a almost like a peg shaper, and you'll get like extra Teflon pin on the other side of it that's actually shaped to the taper of the bridge pin hole.
Right.
It sounds crazy, but it actually works.
So here, I'm much more locked in just because I changed the pins. I fit this one before with whatever two pins it had, and this bridge is locked. That's not going anywhere. I can push the guitar around with just the bridge. It's not flipping on me at all. So that aspect of pinning my bridge, and we used to do lots of different things. For a period of time, we were using the bridge bolts from Stu Mac, these guys with the holes through them. We would put them in a bridge for a period of time where we would slip them through the bridge, put them in the top. Then you'd have to reach inside and you'd have to tighten the screw. Then we tried doing the thing where you had the bolt coming through the top and we screwed it on the bottom. And I had found that that worked. However, the pins, those bolts, because they have to be smaller than the hole, wind up allowing for a little bit of wiggle to take place and a little bit of skating around to the bridge. And plus, the whole aspect of doing bridge reglue for me was eliminating the fiddle factor when it came time for glue. So the fit was 100% important to me. 98% of the job was in the fit of the bridge. Then I had, included in that is how well pinned my bridge is. So this can't physically move up or down or left and right. This particular bridge doesn't move at all. So now when it comes to gluing, I just spread my glue, make sure my edges are clean. Doesn't matter which glue I'm using. Clamp it down, and then get the clamps on, and I can show you what we do with clamps. So the whole idea was eliminating steps. So we started with doing bridge bolts and lots of stuff like that. If I come over here, we can quickly take a look at some clamps. We used to use these style, I guess this is, I'm not sure if this is, I think this is Stumac over here. These one-piece jobs where you would drop it on the bridge. Let me find a bridge to drop it on. So here's our bridge. This would take one clamp here, and then you would extend the ends to push down on the sides. I was never enamored with that because I always felt like if I misjudged how much pressure to put on the sides, I was winding up bending a bridge or forcing a bridge where I'm forcing the edges down. And remember, coming back to the importance of the fit of a bridge, here, if this fits well, it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to just hold that in place and get some squeeze out. If you're in a position where you have to force a bridge to meet the top of the face, then you're asking too much of the bridge and you're going to wind up with a bridge that comes up later. But we have messed with these. This is the Fox Bridge clamp. I believe that was from LMI. We've used those. And for me, they worked. We've had successful bridge reglues. Another thing we did when we became a tailor shop was using this thing, which sits on top of a tailor bridge. It indexes into the saddle slot, and then you can use one clamp here and then two clamps here, and it conforms to the bridge for you as a call for the top of the bridge. We found that anything that added too much in the way of fiddle factor was detrimental to how well my bridge reglue went, or our bridge reglue went. For clamps, for me, it was always Waverly. Let me grab one. Waverly and the Ibex, which the Ibex is always problematic because you don't have a bottom foot. So you always had to use a caul inside the guitar. We, for a period of time, would gravitate towards always using the Waverleys because we had an adjustable foot that we could put inside the guitar. The Stu Mac's version of that in these guys was a nice substitute. They're a little weaker than the Ibex and than the Waverleys, I do like the fact that you have feet that are removable, that you could put whatever you want in its place. This is a caul, it's just cut out from plastic. So the nice thing about this is if, if I'm slipping it in a guitar, come this way, if I'm slipping it in a guitar, I can slide it onto a brace, slide it right down into position where I'm at for my bridge, and that index is there, and it's a quick slide it in, move it into position over the wing, clamp it up, and I'm done. And that's a nice way to be able to index on. So that's one of the things I loved about the Stu Mac ones, is that you could change the feet to a number of different kind of feet that you would want to use. Of course, they sell the ones where you can snap on the big white pieces or on top. In recent years, Stumac started selling these, which I've even bought some more of. I actually like these a lot. They have the adjustable foot on the bottom. You can make calls to slip over the top of them.
Do they deflect less than the other ones?
They're pretty solid. They don't really deflect. I can't really move it much. To me, one of the old wave. These, by the way, are not Waverleys. These are the Northfield mandolin outfits. Are they Northfield? Yeah, that's what they call themselves. These are just replicas of the Waverleys, which are fantastic. That they started making them, and they're actually pretty cheap. And these hold up really, really well over time. You can tell that I'm not bashful about buying clamps. I have a wonderful collection of them. They're, the old adage of you can never have too many clamps is, to me, paramount for getting this right. It cuts down on some of the time. So, for example, if I have one set up for a brace with a brace coal that we made for it, I'll just keep it on there, and then I have one that's not. So if I have, enough clamps that I don't have to fiddle too much with one of them. Coming back to the fit of the bridge, second part of, while we're talking about clamps, the second part of success in a bridge reglue is getting in and out quickly, which is why dry runs for me is everything. So once I've got my bridge on, if the glue is in place, I can sit there. Now I'm indexed on the brace, and I slide down. Here I am indexed, and I slide down, and then I'm in place, and I can just slip my bridge clamp on. I would be doing that secondarily. I always clamp it in the center first. So dry runs with my clamps pre-chosen and selected is paramount for how many times I do it, 2 or 3 or 4 times in a row without glue. And then once I've got my routine down for a particular guitar, that's when we worry about the glue. Coming back to Ibex, my favorite bridge clamp modification is this. We've been using these. I've got a number of these made up for from 25, 30 years ago. What we've done is we drilled through the bottom of the clamp. This piece here is a caul for underneath the bridge plate. That is also threaded to slip onto my 5/16 thread that is threaded through the bottom of the clamp. So I put an adjustable foot here that I can take a bridge caul, and that hole is threaded. This is acetal, which is a plastic. It's a high density, high HDPE plastic that's similar to Delarin, and it slips right on there. I can turn this so that it's perpendicular to the hole, slide it in the guitar. Then if I had to slip my hand inside the guitar, I was standing on the right side of the guitar. I could slip my hand inside the guitar, turn it so it's now the right position for the bridge, and it's underneath the top, underneath the coil where I need it, and that sits right between those two pins. And it's sitting right there. If I have a different style of bridge, where I need a different call or a different size call, here for example, that has the same hole indexed in it for me to take this call off. And this is a huge one, but this was for a Gibson with a gargantuan bridge plate. This slips right on. Try to do this without watching it. I gotta screw that first. There we go. So this tightens on to this, and that can turn so I can get inside the guitar, slip my hand inside the guitar, turn this the right way, and that's right into position where I need it. That's probably the biggest one we've had. These two holes exist here for the bridge pins to slip past and index into those two holes. So this way the call doesn't wind up pushing my bridge pins out of the holes, where that they're indexing the top. But this is probably our primary style of clamp that we use for the center of all of our bridges. That we have a number of different calls that we use for different guitars to fit within the X brakes. They all have that threaded hole where I just slip that. I'm going to do this in front of the camera. Slip that here, tighten that on, and that threads right into place for positioning of the guitar. Now getting quick inside the guitar for the center of the bridge. What you don't see here, as far as the wings of the bridge, whichever fits the guitar best. If I've got one that I want to index on a brace because the brace happens to wind up running dead center with where the end of the center of the wing is. If the brace is farther out here and if I'm sitting on the inside of a brace, I would probably use one of these that would sit inside the top, or sit inside my call. If I have a bigger call that's inside the bridge here, this is going to sit against the bottom of the call and not come into contact with the brace anyway. But those are primarily what I'm looking for. This, I'll put the original one back on there. When it's time to glue up, this would go in first. On here, I will always use, before I put clamps on, let me just address one last issue, which is calls. Bridge calls for the top of the bridge. These are TJs. These are wonderfully nice. They're not perfect for every bridge. Some bridges, some modern bridges, I think these are cut for bridges, for TJ's period correct bridges. So some of them sit a little funky on a modern bridge, but they're great for period correct bridges. we have almost as many calls as we do bridge reglues. This is one that is fit to match the curvature of the bottom of a Martin bridge top right there. It has a hole reamed out of it so that when this sits this way, it indexes right into that hole, whether it's that kind of bridge. We have these that we make for the wings of a bridge that index into the Waverleys like that. So I will pre-select our calls for a particular bridge, and we make them. If I have a unique bridge, I will make a set of calls. There are lots of different calls here for a glue that sits on top of a Martin guitar. We have other ones that are fit. I think this is also a Martin that will fit. No, it's not a Martin. That's a steeper curve. So I will go through our bridge calls to choose one that's going to fit precisely bridge rule. By Taylor guitar, we have this one is okay. I like this one to a degree. I've used it sometimes. Sometimes it's a little bit clunky, but I have others that here is a set of calls to fit my Taylor guitar, and they're shaped precisely to fit both the wings and the top of a Taylor bridge. The Taylor top here has a curve. This back is curved here. That is shaped to fit precisely the top. So when it's pressing in the back as well as the front. And that would be like that. So, we do all of that stuff in preparation for getting the bridge clamped up. So if I were to select, say if I were using that from that side. So the time, and I know I've got good. I have my clamps pre-selected. I have my calls ready to go. My glue is on, and we slip that into place. That gets dropped where I need it. In fact, I think I posted a video on the Instagram yesterday of me doing precisely this with an actual bridge reglue. But that is all the time it should take once there's glue on the bridge. If you drop that bridge in place, that's all that needs to take place because all of the work was done beforehand. One last thing in terms of tricks, or two last things in terms of tricks. One is related to hide glue. Let me take the clamps off of this thing. The other thing is related to the fit of the bridge. Any questions about anything so far? Any comments about anything so far?
Hey, Doug.
Yeah.
This is Joe. How are you, my
Joe?
friend?
Good. What's going on, Joe?
Hey, what do you radius those white calls? Do you put any radius when you do to the top, or are those dead flat?
These?
The that I love that idea, by the way. I just
Is that-
wondered if you put any radius to that.
Some of them are radius, some of them are flat. It depends on the guitar. Like I said, that's why we have so many of them.
Okay.
Because the one constant changing characteristic is the bridge at hand, or the you know the bridge, the guitar in question. So sometimes it depends on the guitar. If I've got a flat top that's actually closer to being flat, and that's the other thing too about shaping. Before we talk about glues, the same thing would be the case for shaping. Here it is. I used to use this, which is a 25-foot radius concave dish that I would sand a bridge on. If I grab a Martin bridge from over here. Oh, here it is. So this, the next time we have to glue a Taylor bridge, if they're not back in the box, Sharon will kill me. But if I was shaping a bridge, this is a 25-foot dome with the peak in the center of the dome that I could shape the bridge and sand it, trying to get the dome here. If it was a belly bridge where the belly was a little bit farther back, I could spin it and sand it with the dome back here to try to fit the bridge a little bit more. And that's how I would start doing my sanding of the bridge to try to get it to be close. We have all seen this act, and this might be a little controversial because I very rarely say that something is unacceptable or something is wrong or what have you. And I'm not prone to doing that at all, because there are enough ways to skin a cat, and there are enough opinions that we can talk about the differences in our opinions without telling each other that what we do is right or wrong. However, we have all seen, and I'm just going to use this just because this tape is closer at hand, where somebody takes some pre-mask tape, puts it in this whole area here. They then take after this is all taped up, they'll then take some double-sided or sticky tape, and they will put it down on the bridge here for the purposes of, once that's stuck in place, being able to then shape the bridge and sand it to the top. That is, I have seen that done more times than I can shake a stick at, and every time I see it, it gives me a queasy stomach for two reasons. One, I've done this in the past. I learned how to glue bridges on, and this is how I was taught how to do them. And every time I did it, it bothered me. This is a guitar. This is not a sanding call. This is not a tool that I'm going to use to shape a bridge against. Not to mention, I have to sit here and move a bridge back and forth this way, and then back and forth this way, and back and forth this way, and back and forth this way within a fraction of an inch. I'm not really taking much material off of here. I can tell just by seeing the scraping that's taking place and watching the sandpaper that it's just taking material off the back of the bridge and the sides of the bridge. I can tell you for a fact, because this is the bridge that I've already shaped to this guitar, that if I did that and continued, I have the pins in the right way. There we go. That this bridge already fits perfectly to the top. If I continued doing that and took material off here, here, and here, I will wind up with a bridge that's no longer matched to the curvature of the top. So right off the bat, doing that on the guitar will always yield results that, in my opinion, is questionable. Plus, probably the one customer service nightmare I ever had as a young Luth involves putting tape on the face of a guitar, then using the guitar as my tool with which to sand a bridge against in the hopes that it would match the face of the guitar, which it never does, by the way. And when I pulled the bridge and pulled the tape, I wound up with finish on pre-mask paper and wind up with having to do a touch-up on a guitar that it was early enough in my career that I wasn't as good at it then that I am now, and then had to be in a position of talking myself out of it, and the PTSD of having to deal with that customer service nightmare so early in my career put me on a path to figure out a way to never have to use a guitar to shape a bridge to it by sanding the bridge against the guitar. What I came up with, and this is available on our Instagram for you to make one of your own, is that. This is my variable radius sander. I can adjust the radius of the sander to match the radius of my top. So here, I was going to bring this back up. If I take a contour gauge and I match to the top of the face of the guitar, and by the way, if I have a guitar in that's just for a bridge reglue that has strings on it, and that's what I'm going to be doing. If I have a guitar in which has a whole series of things that take place, I got to remove the bridge, I got bridge plate to do, I got brace repairs, I have a crack to do, we have a pickguard to replace. You don't necessarily have the luxury to do it piecemeal. But if I do have one where it's just a bridge reglue and then I'm on to some other aspect of, say, doing frets or something like that, or it's just a bridge reglue and a setup and making a saddle or something like that, with the strings on the guitar and the strings at tension, I will take a prop jack, I will prop it up underneath the bridge plate to lock it in place with the strings on, so I can drop that. You can do the same thing with a scissor jack, where I lock this, that's sitting squarely underneath the bridge plate, and it's just holding the same shape of the top. I rotate the thumb wheel down to where it's locked. Now that's never going to change in terms of the height of the bridge, so that if I want to then take the contour of the top, then I can pull the strings, the top won't sink and flatten out, it'll keep the same dome that it has. I'll take my contour gauge that visually looks like it might be flat. If I grab a straight edge, I find that it's not, it's domed. So I will then match this to, that's too flat. I need tighten this until that, oops, let's see, oh, let me take that again. So I will adjust that until it matches the curvature of my contour gauge. Once that's set, I chuck this in a vise. I can take my bridge, wherever it might be, Oh, here it is. This is another place where having a nice selection of these pins from Studimac really comes in handy, because the ones that are cut off, that don't go all the way through to the bottom of the bridge, oh. There we are. So now I've got a couple of handles. I can stand here and sand this to the same exact shape of the bottom of my bridge, and you can see where it's taking material off right inside the curve, instead of the areas where the sandpaper on the face of the guitar was taking material off here, here, and here where I didn't need it, where this one will fit. And this has already been done for this particular bridge. But then I was always match the curvature of the top of the guitar. So that's this thing. If you go back through, I'm going to do an article for the Luth group with a parts list and how to make your own. A few people have already made their own, but if you scroll back through my Instagram, you'll see a couple of posts where you can see the variable radius sander and a parts list and instructions on how to build it. But I'm going to do a full-fledged article for the Luth group website on how to do that so you can make your own. The last bit of information is hide glue. When you're using hide glue, it's a great thing to preheat your parts. I've never been a huge fan of heat guns and guitars, just because I don't trust how hot they're getting, and I never like sitting there with a heat gun pointed at a guitar, waving it at a guitar where the finish around it is getting hot. I need to pre-warm and preheat my bridges for my hide glue to give you a little bit extra working time. These you can find at any Goodwill or junk shop, Savers, those kind of thrift stores. These are electric hot plates that you used to use in days gone by, where you would use it as a food warmer. This one has a variable heat control. They plug in. Here's a small one that's a nice one for benchtop, which is pretty small. These get to about 150 degrees, which is perfect for hide glue. And all I do when I'm doing a hide glue glue up is I just put my bridge on this, start dealing with my, selecting my calls, selecting my clamps, doing my dry runs for figuring out whether I want to call with, that's indexed for a brace, or whether I want to use, this kind of clamp, or what kind of center call I want to use on my ibex clamp. And I just let it just sit here, and I let it heat until it's about 150 degrees, and then it can sit there. When it's ready, just grab the bridge, put your glue on, put your index pins in, and you're ready to go. The other part you have to heat is the bridge face, this part, which is the part you usually wind up sitting here waving a heat gun at the top of the guitar. And that's always bothered me, because it's getting kind of warm, and I'm always worried about the finish on the guitar. I've shown this off back when we first looked at doing not brace repairs, binding repairs. My secret weapon for that is another tool that's from the last century, and you have to dig to find them now, but this is a 60-watt light bulb. You can use a 100-watt light bulb. These are wonderful for heating things on a guitar, whether you're heating binding for the sake of relaxing it back in this place, heating the face of a guitar, because it doesn't throw a ton of heat, but it throws enough heat to get this up over 100 degrees so that it stays warm without baking the finish surrounding it. If you are a workstation user, which I am obviously, I take a desk lamp or a magnetic lamp that you would use, say, at a drill press. I put it here, turn on my light bulb, and I drop this right over the guitar, and that sits there when I'm ready for glue. The heat that comes off the light bulb will be hot enough to get this up to about 125, 130 degrees, which is just hot enough for me to not worry about, the open time with my glue. If I want a little bit of extra open time, I can heat this there. I can heat a bridge here. And then when I'm ready to go, it's a matter of picking up my bridge with my pins. Oh, here we go. My bridge is all ready to go. I pick my bridge up. So I got my bridge heating and ready to go. Pick my bridge up, get my pins in place. There, a handle at the same time. Spread my glue on. This comes right off. This goes on with the glue. The pins index it into place so it's not going to jostle around while I clamp up. I get my clamps on the same way you saw me do before. And then I can go about doing my glue squeeze out cleanup, which I do in my workstation after clamps are on. If you go back to yesterday's post on Instagram, I can then turn the guitar around, clean up my glue all the way around, get it any side that I need without having to twist myself into a pretzel. And the job is done. The one thing you won't see in terms of choice of clamps, and this is another thing that may be somewhat controversial. I know people like them. I think they are the worst bridge clamp you could possibly use. But the one thing you don't see are any of these. These are great clamps. They are never bridge clamps. When you clamp a bridge up in one of these, and this is, again, just my opinion, when you clamp anything in the working end of one of these at this top, and you pull this cam, this whole bridge moves this way. So if you have something clamped up in here, whatever it might be, and you pull up that cam, that's sucking anything you have in this way. It's not just pressing down, it's pushing in this way. So if you want a bridge to creep forward on you, use one of these. But that's the only thing I'll say about what not to use. I am not a fan of those. I don't think they have anything to do around a bridge. I'm not a fan of them. The last thing I'll say regarding these, and this is something I've seen as well, this is never acceptable. If you need to clamp a wing down from outside the guitar, I don't care what you're using on the inside, whether you're using a brace jack or anything, this is never an acceptable thing to do. If you have a guitar with a sound hole, you should be squeezing these two pieces together from this side and this side of the bridge, not from the top down because all you're going to wind up doing is squeezing the back and the face together. No matter what even if you use a scissor jack or a brace jack in between, that's never an acceptable thing to do. You don't need that kind of pressure. You hardly need any pressure holding this bridge down when you're gluing it down. If you have to really bear down on a bridge, you've made the mistake at the fitting stage. So,
But by the way, Doug, I think that makes an argument against those the unit clamp over the top with the two wing nuts that screw the caul down to the
are you talking
wings.
about this one? Yeah, I bought one of these when they first came out and used them a few times, and of course I never get rid of a tool once I own it, but I can't tell you the last time I used one of these. I agree with you there that you can. It's very difficult to tell how much pressure you're exerting on the wings, and you're going to wind up deflecting a bridge that way.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of these. I'm sure there are places for them. I'm sure there are different versions of them that are, the Fox one is interesting because it pulls down on the top and then presses down on the sides by indexing this way onto a wooden caul.
Is there a caul on the inside of the guitar for that one, or no?
There is no. You have to make a caul for
Okay.
the inside of the guitar. It doesn't come with one. You have to make one and then slip these through. I guess something like this, where you would slip it through
Yeah.
that
Hold on
way.
a second. Hold on a
and then
second.
squeeze it together.
Hold on a second. Dan, how are you doing?
Do we have Dan?
I'm sorry I'm late. I'm back from the dead.
Uh,
I'm
You can
kind
take-
of going kind of slow, and
well, the dead's not been the same since Jerry died, so
You
I'm
can
happy
take
to
my-
be
you can
here.
You can take my pin down so we can all see Dan.
actually we should probably let's see here.
We're gonna.
We should is Beau gonna do a live demonstration?
Yeah.
We should get on with that. And
Yes,
then
we
we'll come back to Dan. Dan, you got time for a live demonstration?
I do.
All right.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, dog.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, guys. Hi, Beau.
There's a guy standing behind you, Dan, just in case you don't know he's there.
That red hat on.
I've been out for 4 days. I got pretty sick. But
It's just fantastic today, I must say.
Okay. So is there any questions about all of that, or is that just all?
I think that's all pretty good.
I have a question.
Sure.
How do you learn all this stuff?
I learned it from you.
I doubt it.
That's where I learned it from.
Ready for the demo?
Let's do it.
I'll just log in on my phone too, so I got a second thing. So all my little bits and pieces are the same as Doug's, really. I won't bother.
You need me to send you the link to your email?
No, I've got it. I just have to turn my phone picture around.
There we go.
But I'm going to change cameras anyway. Can you put it back? I don't know.
Say that one more time.
All right, so that turn to the other camera of mine.
Okay. Hold on a sec. I look good.
So I'll just quickly. So if the top needs correcting, I'll use the TJ Thompson belly corrector. Then I'll put this on here before I take the bridge off and scribe around it with scalpel, and then get the excess off with the dogleg chisel.
Ooh, where'd
Really,
that dogleg chisel come from?
from I think it's people.
People?
People. They're I'll get the number later, but they're really good.
Okay.
And get right down there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And I just go around the edge and just take off that, 90 thou or something. I've got an article coming out in Guild of American Lutherie, and it talks about the percentages of how much glue area is lost when there's 90 thou edge of finish around under the bridge.
Yeah.
Can you pull down the second pin so we just see the
Yep. Hold on one second. Beau, you didn't want this other pin up yet?
No, not
How did you calculate that surface area?
Tom Dahlia helped me.
Ah, so it was the power of computers.
Let's see if that's a focus. Yeah, so then I shape the bottom of the bridge with scrapers, sanding block. Use this from Stu Mac for the bottom of the bridge. Controversial. Haven't done that yet. I also use my
Oh, the trowel or the hose?
yeah, those are wonderful.
these are really worth.
Well, your focus on there is that your phone or your camera? Oh, okay. I think maybe it's set up for detecting faces or something. That's all right. We'll make do.
And, there's always something.
Yeah. You want to just take it off autofocus and put it on and just manually focus to the bridge footprint? Easy. Easy. Careful. Careful. Easy. A little further.
Seems like it's not what I'm seeing, and on the computer isn't the same thing.
Huh. Well, maybe it's zoom bandwidth. It looks like the camera filter they used for shooting Barbara Walters during the interviews. Real soft, kind of Vaseline on the lens kind of move.
You want to do my
You want to go back to your phone? Let's see if I can find it.
it might also be a family.
That's good. That's workable.
Yeah,
Do that.
it's got one of those fancy pickguard bridges
Yeah.
or bridge pickguards.
You got to do a Linda Manzer conversion on
And I got the line and straight back and then do that flat angle. And the dog leg chisel, you can actually see a tiny bit what he's doing. So
Man, I want a dog leg chisel.
it's really good. How you sharpen them, you just
Is that got a bit of a skew to it too? Is that dog leg and skew?
what do you mean?
Is the end of it angled? Like, is the cutting surface angled?
Looks square. I think it's just the way it's sharpened.
Oh, okay.
And you sharpen it by just, and this is a diamond stone, you just,
Oh, that's why the other end is polished. I see.
but this is 20 years old, so still got 40 years to go.
Yeah.
So, okay, clamps are the same. I've got all my typical things. I've talked about all this. This is the one which I made. Just nothing new there. My 28-foot radius thing. Don't see on the bottom of the brick. These will. This is my what Doug hates section. I do want to get a silicon kind of version of this so I can put it over there. I sell them on Amazon for like, I don't know, $20 or something. So I'll do that one day. Yeah. That's the very quick show and tell. To clean up a touch. I've got the mirror in here. We've got a timer which is going to come in handy.
And what are you timing? Okay.
Don't want to give away my trick. Well, I will. My Dan early one. So
Very nice.
okay, you talked about heating up parts, and I just do it on my glue part. I'm not sure what angle is going to be best in, so I'll just sort of figure out.
You tilt just a little. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's nice.
So what? I'm sorry, I might have missed it. I was trying to see if somebody's trying to come in. What's the hockey puck on there?
That's the timer. So
Aha.
get to that in a sec. The first thing I do is get some of the low tack sumac tape. And this is going, it's a different form of what Doug does with the pins, which I ordered from Sumac while he was talking about them.
So this is what is this the transfer right tape? that low tack? Yeah, okay.
The nice trick is to pre-fold one end. And then I'm just going to cut that out. I'll go a little bit further on the sides. It's like 1/8, not 1/8, 1/32. Then I'll move it forward a touch and then get front.
Okay. So you're making a little bit of an oversized stencil. Nice.
It's a little makes sense. I'll just do it and then I'll talk about why I do it. Because there'll be a 15-minute wait period, which we don't have to actually wait with. Then I get that heating element thing you got, Doug, was really good, but I just do that. But I also do that in conjunction with the
The heat gun. Yeah.
But what are you using for a double boiler on that? What's your inside? Ah, okay.
Schmuckers.
So I developed this after a friend of mine who's a cello maker told me about how he glued his fingerboards on. And he basically glued on a piece of wood here and a piece of wood here and another 2 bits of wood up in the neck. And then you could just put the fingerboard on like that and it would just index straight away. I thought that would be a really good way to go about the high glue problem, which is you don't have enough time to look around, basically. This stage, while the the bridge is heating up, I just prepare my lamps. But the 2 outer ones are the wings. I just use those indented meat versions of the schematic. I aim to use 3 or 4, you know, 3 for 20 years, and I've started doing 4. And then I choose whatever wing bit fits best. So let's say schematic pyramid bridge, and I've got the pyramid version of it. So like that. For this one, I'll either use this kind of a thread. Don't worry about the center. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
and
So you're getting kind of double duty with that call where you're getting the end of the call plus you're getting some pressure on the outside of the body of the bridge.
I use those ones from Stumax always. DJ Thompson.
Yeah. Those are great too. With the clamp, let me ask you, with the clamps you're using, those are these the Stumac ones?
And that's a Northfield one.
Okay, and so those white, I never tried that. Do those white caps or the cauls that snap onto the Stumac ones, do they snap onto the Northfield ones as well?
They do, but I had to put 2 bits of the green masking tape so they fit a little bit nicer.
Oh, okay, so it was a little loose. So when you use those for the underside of the guitar, you find that, because I like them for that too, they're big and wide, so they spread the pressure a little nicely. You find that sufficient for the underside call for no matter where you are on the bridge.
Seems to be, yeah. I haven't got any strange effect from doing it this way, not using a call that like your calls. I have done it before where I use a for a classical guitar, basically this thing.
Right.
But it just jumps over every fan, so it's got 7 or 9 of these, and it's completely under the foot.
Sure. So with those, the reason why I'm asking about the Stumac, those white feet from Stumac, have you ever found them to be too big, where they kind of sit like up against a brace and it pulls you too far in from the wing, or no?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll take these off on the inside, or this one I checked before, and there's an X brace running right under where I want it. So that'll be going just there.
Okay.
Sometimes they're out here or in there. They're out where the best spot is, but ideally I like to be right.
Yeah. So on the inside there, are you sitting on the X brace or on the inside of it?
The X brace.
Okay.
I just get to see the valve to I won't bother heating this up anymore because I'll hit it with a gun. But part of my process is I wax at least the edge of the bridge. And this will be careful not to touch the bottom gluing it. So
And so you're doing that to keep the glue from sticking to that surface? Okay.
it's I don't know why I think it wasn't my idea that but, but as long as you remember to do that. So I'm just getting my hot glue ready. So that's 100%. Definitely temporarily change them. That's good enough now.
And those are just regular bridge pins?
I think I really need, I can't find. Yeah. Those pins, the Teflon pins that you use are a really good idea. I came up with a different way based on that cello making friend of mine. And involves using tabs made from the cheapest tape I can find. But as I can't find that, I'm going to use the most expensive tape. Because it's the way the world works. And it's been sitting in front of me for 2 hours, and I just missed it. I can't find it. So this cut in quite deep. I'm probably getting about a 30-second depth here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And normally I use the cheapest masking tape for this. So I'll be indexing this tape on this edge. This one I just very straight. The natural edge of this tape is straight. So and then basically keep doing that all the way around the bridge.
So your first cut into the bridge was to get the depth that you like, and then you can just peel it back and slice it off with a scissor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just getting the same as being a bridge that isn't going to move anywhere. I'm just using tabs to achieve that instead of the Teflon things that we use. And I thought I'd be smart and try and use some magnets. The ones that I got don't seem to be strong enough. I get those.
Did you just say you tried to do this with magnets?
I didn't do a glue up, but I did buy some and try and use them. So they're basically magnet tabs.
Right.
They're just not quite strong enough. So I'm going to try this again with stronger magnets. I'm probably on the back, I'll be going through the bridge plate and the top. So these weren't quite strong enough. But now with this, I can basically throw it across the room and index it and it doesn't move.
Oh wow.
You just have to, make sure these are pushed in. And so what I do is put that there, and I've got my dud gun, and I can't remember what this is on, but I can dial in whatever temperature the black. And because I can glue this up so fast, I don't really, not that worried about it. I actually glued up one a couple of weeks ago where I didn't bother getting out the heat gun. I just knew that I could do it so fast that it did it without heat.
I think this is something that we all do as kind of a security blanket.
Yeah. And
It makes us feel good. And I don't know, time, if you've done your prep work beforehand, with your bridge fitting and you're making sure your dry runs with your cauls and your clamps. Like I said earlier, by the time you get to doing the glue, it's a minute.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times the heat is just, for comfort's sake.
Yeah.
Makes me feel fuzzy.
In an appropriate way so that it deflects off here onto there. And yeah, that's fun, right? Let me make sure I'm back the bridge side again. Sometimes I forget to do this waxing and it still works totally fine. I'm ready to go.
Oh, are you gonna put the timer on? Oh, okay.
So I just swapped this one thing for about being neat. If you forget to do something, you get through. To put the masking tape on the inside so the glue doesn't run down the hole. You know.
Yeah, that's, I was going to mention earlier that whenever I do a bridge reglue, I always make sure that there's a paper towel on the back of the guitar.
I was like, oh shit.
This hole is kind of being funny. I just do away with it. But now that's glued on. Now I get that. What I do, I just leave that as is for 15 minutes.
So you leave it without going back to cleanup.
And what happens after 15 minutes, it gels enough that when you pull it off, if it's waxed well, it just all comes away. And there's very, very little residue left. Sometimes I've like barely touched it.
I'll have to wait. We got to watch this glue dry.
Yeah, so we've got 15 minutes to talk about stuff. Also, I've gone away and had lunch and come back like an hour later and done the same thing. So it's not essential that 15 minutes.
All right.
So
Dan, what do you think about? Oh, sorry.
You can see my other camera if you want. I mean, my other angle.
So while we're waiting for the 15 minutes, does anybody have any questions or anything that they've seen so far?
I have a comment, Beau. When you're experimenting with using magnets for your instead of your glue, your tape tabs, the one caution I have is you start putting clamps near those and it pulls everything out of whack. You can either put a ding in your top because your clamp all of a sudden was attracted to the magnet, or you move your magnets around.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that.
So the first thing I do when an instrument comes in where the bridge needs to be taken off for whatever reason, I scribe around the bridge, the full footprint, with a brand new number 11 scalpel blade. These cost like $10 for a box of 100, so just grab a new one at the drop of a hat. And this will ensure the greatest gluing surface, so 100% footprint. So skipping ahead a little bit, this is a kind of a dummy guitar that I'm using for this tutorial. The bridge isn't ready to be glued on, but I tape up the inside. Then to get you'll see why I do this in a little bit, but I lay down some low-tack tape, the 3-inch tape that Stu Mac sell, and I scribe around the back first, and then on the sides I just move the scalpel blade out about a 32nd or a mil and a half. Then I move the whole thing forward and scribe the front edge of the bridge. And that gives me a nice cutout shape, which I can apply over the finish without damaging any new or vintage finish. So you just peel this off, and a good tip is to tape up one end, fold it back on itself, and you can see there on my far right hand that I've done the sort of a tab on the low-tack tape. And I'm just laying this down neatly, and you get a nice 1 to 2 mil finish edge around the bridge. And here I'm jumping back and forth in my footage, but you get the idea. Now here is the next tip, which I got this idea from a cello making friend of mine who does this to index his cello fingerboards. So what I do, I get the cheapest, nastiest masking tape that I can find, like, $1 a roll kind of stuff. And I just cut into it like that. And it's usually about 1 mil thick, something like that. And 43 thou. So 1 mil is 40 thou thick. And then I get some scissors and cut it. And I use the edge of the masking tape, not the cut surface, but the edge. And I use that as a tab to push hard up against the perfectly placed and clamped bridge. And I add as many as I think I need. It's, minimum of 6, which takes care of every area. But sometimes I'll put a couple more on in the middle of the front and back just to be sure. And you can see that I'm, pushing that edge up hard against the bridge. So there's no chance of this bridge moving when I do the final glue up, because the importance of this is that I can just index the bridge straight away without even thinking. See, that's placed there, and it's not going to slip, back and forth. It's just locked in place, so to speak, by the use of these tabs. I've been using this tab technique for a few years now, and when I use hot high glue, this technique has been absolutely invaluable, and I really love it. Another really good way to ensure that the bridge isn't going to move is to use these Teflon bridge pin locating dowel things from Stu Mack, which I recently learned about these from Doug Proper on the Luth group when he was doing a talk with the Dan and Doug show. And these are kind of self-explanatory, but the Luth group I want to talk about. The Luth group is an online resource for luthiers of all levels to come together and share their knowledge as basically a hive mind. The website, which is luthgroup.com, is full of amazing resources like this map, which shows the members, which is about 1,000 around the world at the moment. This is me in Grand Junction. But you can zoom into anywhere in the world and see what's going on there. We're a bit light on Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, unfortunately, but we're in America, Western Europe, Singapore and India. Other parts of the website show this is the feed, which is the general feed of what's going on with members. The nucleus of this website is the archive, and these are the videos and interviews which have been conducted by various members. There is, 14 pages of these, and this is a video by Iris Carr. It's a pretty recent one, and this one goes for 1 hour and 45 minutes. And there are 14 pages of stuff like this. It's just fantastic resource, just things you don't get anywhere else. And it's just hours of information from world-class luthiers. Each member has their own page, so you can look them up and see what their speciality is. And there's also the contributing partners.
Ian Devlin, Dan Earlywine, Doug Proper, Michael Batchkin, Gary Hayes, James Rodman, Grace DeMaron, and last but not least, Evan Gluck. Gluck, yeah!
There's also a calendar for upcoming events and international events. However, I've saved the best to last, which is the Luth group. And basically, this is every member of the Luth group has the ability to live stream their workshop. And if you run into a problem, you can ask in real time, however many Luths are on at any one time from around the world. You basically never get stuck not knowing something ever again. And the Luthalong has proven to be the most valuable resource for the Luthies involved. It's just incredible, and I love it. There's also some fun Luth-based merch, so check that out. If you want to become a part of the Luth group, just go to their Patreon page and join. There's 2 different tiers based on how much information you want to get and pay for, basically. So with the tabs in place, I'm sorting out what calls to use for whatever bridge I'm using. These are the TJ Thompson bridge gluing calls. Stu Mack sold them, as does TJ Thompson on his website, Pro Luthier Tools, I think it's called. So I'm just using the bottom 3 black things here in this picture, but the really cool things are the top 2 parts, which are designed to fit over an X-brace, and one side of them is a little bit longer than the other, so one side touches the top itself and the other side touches the bridge plate, and it just creates this really good bond for, or surface for, clamping up the bridge wings. So here I am just heating up the components being the top and the bridge. And this part is very important for what I do, how I do it, which will make sense. So I just use any wax product to wax off the bridge. Normally not needed, but for the technique that I use, you'll see why. So just do the sides of the bridge and don't get any on the bottom. If you do get any on the bottom, just give it a quick scrape. So this is me with a very small brush brushing on some high glue after the area's been heated up and the bridge has been heated up. And sometimes I put the bridge on the hot high glue pot to heat up as well. And there's various ways you can do that. But I take about 20 seconds to do this. I could do it. I've since bought a bigger brush, and this would go a lot quicker with a bigger brush. Bigger the better. And I think it takes about 40 seconds for me to get the first clamp on, which is more than it should take, frankly. But I just had that tiny little brush that I pissed around with for 20 seconds. So I could have got that down to 2 dips. So 5, 6, 7 seconds. But as soon as you get that middle clamp on, the bridge should be very well seated because you've done a lot of preparation work and you've fit the radius of the bridge to the radius of the top. And if you have a good matching radius, then as soon as you get that middle clamp on, you're more than halfway there. But obviously I clamp as many clamps on as I can onto this area just to make sure. You kind of really only need 3, 1 in the middle and 1 on each wing, but I usually add those 4th and 5th clamps just to be on the safe side. The safe side is always the best side. So here's a close-up of the mess that's left afterwards. As you can see, I really blob on that high glue. I do it quickly, and I don't worry about the squeeze out right now. And there's a good reason for that, and it correlates to why I waxed off the bridge wings. So I found out a kind of a strange thing in regard to high glue batches. In previous batches, I had to wait about 15 minutes before I could remove the glue, and this will all become obvious later on. But this batch, I seem to have had to have waited about half an hour for the glue to dry or gel to the correct consistency to not leave any residue. In my previous batch, which was from LMI, it seemed to gel very fast, or much faster, and after 15 minutes I could take it off all this paper, and there was basically 0 residue. You can see all that residue there, and again I'm bumping around with footage here. Here's a different bridge. But this batch of glue is the same batch, but I waited about half an hour, and you can see what the result should have been in that last bit of footage. The glue has gelled nicely, so when I touch it with my fingers, it's not sticky at all. It's kind of just feels a little bit damp or something, but it just pulls away very nicely, and it leaves really minimal residue. And whatever residue is there, you can just clean up with the hot water that's still in the glue pot. And this alternative method of leaving the glue on is the reason why I wax the bridge off and do that thoroughly. So the other method, of course, is to clamp the bridge on and then just clean the residue up straight away like you would with Tide Bond or something like that. And I've done it that way, but I've found that waiting, however long your glue batch needs to gel up and then pulling the residue off is a lot easier. And especially if the glue is not gelled and you're wiping a lot of water around the edges, you will absolutely weaken the strength of the glue around the edge, which is where you really want it and really need it. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, all that kind of stuff, and see you next time.
you.